Well, absolutely incredible developments that I am witnessing here inside Georgia. We're about 50 kilometers, 30 miles or so outside of the capital, Tbilisi, and I'm standing here on the side of the road, witnessing a column of Russian vehicles, military vehicles, moving along the road from the town of Gori towards the city, the Georgian capital city of Tbilisi. Now, they're headed at the beginning of that column with armored personnel carriers, with heavy machine guns on top. There are no tanks in the column that we've seen, but there are a lot of trucks carrying Russian soldiers as well. I've tried to speak to some of the... hold on a second. Ask them if they're going to Tbilisi. Right? I've tried to speak to them to see what their orders are, what their intentions are. They've not been able to... they've not answered us, but they're waving at us. They seem in relatively good spirits. It's incredible. They don't look like a force that is, kind of under any kind of threat. And indeed, we haven't seen any Georgian military putting up any kind of resistance to what is a major Russian incursion into Georgian territory. Let me just make this clear. This is well outside the mandate of the Russian peacekeepers in South Ossetia. This is, many kilometers, maybe 10, 20 or more kilometers outside of South Ossetia, which is the main conflict zone in this dispute between Russia and Georgia. And they are now heading on the road towards Tbilisi. The big question that we don't have answered at this stage, Jim, although I feel that we are going to have it answered very soon, is how far do they intend to go, Jim?
Another question that I have for you, Matthew, you saw them coming down the road. If you can describe about how many armored vehicles are we talking about? How many troops would they hold? If they have no tanks that are in that column, what kind of protection do they have?
You know what? I'm looking back at a column of armored vehicles and military trucks that stretches beyond my line of vision. I mean, so there must be at least 20, 30, possibly more military vehicles. I just can't see because it's a bendy road, so I don't know how far the column stretches back. We're talking about hundreds of troops at the very least. We're talking about a number of armored personnel carriers. I haven't seen any tanks, but we're at the beginning of the column because we don't want to get trapped behind the column. We're in front of the Russian troops as they move towards Tbilisi, so that we make sure that we don't actually get caught behind them. As I say, the mood amongst those troops at the moment seems, victorious, understandably perhaps. They're certainly not tense. They have their guns cocked, but they're not tense at all. They're not making any threatening behavior towards us. They're proceeding at a very slow pace, perhaps only about 20 kilometers an hour along the road towards Tbilisi. Again, but we don't really know how far along that road they intend to go, Jim.
Well, the Russians, diplomats had suggested that they wanted to create a buffer zone outside of South Ossetia, one that would prevent the Georgian troops from attacking South Ossetia, the Russian supporters that are there. And how far away are the Georgian troops? They withdrew about 20, 24 kilometers outside of Tbilisi, didn't they?
They withdrew to Tbilisi, to its environment, and to bases inside the city. I can tell you now, I haven't seen any Georgian troops as this column of Russian armored vehicles and military vehicles approaches the outskirts. Rather, I'm not going to say that, but approaches within 20 or 30 kilometers or so from the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Now, as I say, the Russian troops don't look like they feel they're under any kind of immediate military threat from the Georgians. The Georgians have not put up a fight to this advance. They're in fact nowhere to be seen, Jim, and the Russians are advancing well into Georgian territory. And we're talking about it. You talked about a buffer zone there, but this is something way beyond the buffer zone. I mean, remember the town of Gori, where we were seeing occasional incursions by Russian forces. That was outside the main conflict zone of South Ossetia by about 10 or 15 kilometers. We're talking about a major Russian invasion of Georgian territory, maybe 20, 30 kilometers inside Georgian territory, and really on the western approaches to the city of Tbilisi.
I think it's important for our viewers to explain here. We're looking at, as far as I can tell, this is file tape, isn't it? That we're looking at. I don't want to give anybody the impression that you're looking at live pictures here of what Matthew's describing. This videotape was taken earlier as Matthew is describing a new situation that is developing right now. There is supposed to be a ceasefire. There's supposed to be a pullback by both sides to their positions. The Georgians have pulled back. The Russians doing something very surprising. Matthew Chance, if you can once again describe what you have witnessed with your own eyes this day.
Yeah, I mean, we're actually at the front of that column right now. We're still witnessing these very dramatic developments in Georgia. A column of Russian military vehicles, including armored personnel carriers and trucks full of hundreds, if not thousands, of Russian troops making their way outside the main conflict zone of South Ossetia. They've already left that conflict zone well behind, and they're on the road heading in a concerted way towards the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Now, a number of questions that's raising, not least, how far will they go before they stop? People will they stop? And we don't have the answer to that at the moment.